Thank you very much for joining us here on PM Express. My name is Evans Mensah. On tonight's show, a conversation with a man who is known popularly as Tarzan. I just recently read about the real reason why he was called Tarzan, and that real reason has something to do with the central theme of this conversation, press freedom. You may have noticed, but in the last few months, this conversation has become pretty topical. A lot of things have happened within the sphere of media generally and journalism that has got many talking. We have not only dropped in our press freedom rankings, we're the #1 on the continent, but there have been instances in the last few months that many within the fraternity and also who advocate for press freedom have had to complain about. Radio stations have been shut down, journalists have been shot dead, media people have been beaten. The Media Foundation for West Africa has catalogued a series of them. The reason why the man I'm about to introduce is the man you want to talk to when it comes to press freedom is a man who challenged the status quo. At a time when many dared do that, he set up a radio station that really started this whole movement, this whole revolution within the space that gave me a job sometime later in 2000s. But he pioneered what we now know as private radio in Ghana. He's a man who doesn't hold back when he talks. We've tempted him once to have his own show, and it's always exciting to talk to him because he says it as it is. He's gotten into trouble many times with the government, with his party, with people that he's worked with in the past, but that is who he is, and that's why we need to pick his brain on all the things that matter as far as the press is concerned. Maybe we might also chip in a few of the things that are happening currently that he's observing, because he's also very well adept at talking about things with energy, and there's a lot as well to say about that sector as well. Ladies and gentlemen, my guest today on the show is Dr. Charles Rekrubobe, aka Tarzan. Tarzan, thank you very much for your time here on PM Express.
Good morning.
I've always wondered whether I should just stick to Tarzan or I should just be formal and still call you Dr. Charles Rekrubobe. So help me out on this conversation. Should I say Tarzan or I should say Charles Rekrubobe?
That's what everybody does. So I guess Tarzan is better. Although if my mother was still alive, she would not be happy.
Let's start with that name, because
Yes.
as I said at the intro, that name has a lot to do with the conversation,
Yes.
press freedom. It was a famous minister of communications I recently read that introduced that name, that branded you that, but it was in the context of you fighting for press freedom. Explain.
Yes, I mean, I'm glad you say that, because this famous name was actually given to me on the 6th of December 1994, when the Minister of Information, Tudosbi Kwachi at that time, went to Parliament after Radio I had been closed down by the security apparatus of Ghana with 27 vehicles attacking a small station, and promised Ghana that efforts were underway to provide for radio and broadcasting pluralism, and that they were sorting out things for frequencies to be allocated by, and this is the most important, the National Media Commission.
Okay, that's an interesting one. Did you say the NMC?
NMC, and anybody who cares to check the record of Parliament of the 6th of December 1994 will see that this is the exact statement the minister made, and it was in that statement that he said that I had behaved like Tarzan in the jungle, swinging from tree to tree. But at the time, we felt that this was rather a feather in the cap, and we used that to spare the campaign. And indeed, the one who really pushed this was the then editor of The Independent, later to become GJ president and ambassador, Cabral Bray. And so it was meant to be, if you like, an insult or a pushback, but it turned out to be the thing that spared the whole campaign.
Were you really doing that, moving from tree to tree, as it were, like Tarzan, causing a lot of havoc to the system, because then we didn't know what private radio was?
Exactly. So the whole thing was an irrelevant remark, but meant to create a state of disaffection, but it did not. It rather gave the push for the campaign. And the real reason why Radio I came, I didn't really want to set up a radio station. But if you look back to the story of Ghana, you know, there's always, we have democratic elections, and they tend to be reasonable the first time round. But what has tended to happen is that immediately after the election and the government is elected, we don't have anything but a state media which is disseminating the news. And so by default, it becomes an arm of the state, and we don't get dissenting and contrary and other views. And so before you realize, the government of the day has effectively taken over the functions of the press and is doing propaganda. And after looking at this, I really felt that we could not repeat the same experiment in the Fourth Republic of Ghana, where we will go through a reasonably fair election, the government will be elected, and we'll be back to the monopoly of GBC broadcasting station. And I looked at the Constitution, and it's very clear if you read the chapter on press freedom, especially Article 1623, and it said there shall be no impediments. And in particular, there shall be no need for a license for the establishment of a radio station or media of mass communication. For me, even an Asante engineer, the word there shall be no license was very, very clear. And the same Constitution says unless you have a doubt about the interpretation, then you act as it says. Now, at the time, we had a Ghana Frequency Registration Board. Now, note the word, registration. It didn't say licensing. It said registration. So I wrote to the Frequency Board and said, we want to start a radio station called Radio I, 96.2 megahertz we are choosing. Because we felt, just me explain 96.2, that we're going into election 96. That's the second election of the Fourth Republic. Unless we actually had a free and fair media, then really we're heading down the road, back on the road of government manipulation of the media. So for us, there was no question of a license because the Constitution did not allow that. So we wrote to the Frequency Registration Board and said, look, we are intending to start this. This is the frequency we have selected, and could you please register it for us? Now, I'll tell you, Evans, I think it was a deliberate act because some have argued, you know, especially in the legal profession, that one should have gone to court to seek clarification. Well, I take solace from the Constitution says, unless I'm actually not clear of what the Constitution says. And I also felt that if you went to court, the whole matter would be embroiled in litigation for many, many years. And of course, as long as litigation has started, then really action could not be taken. So that was the reason why we went on air, because we felt that democracy and pluralism went hand in hand, broadcasting pluralism especially. And therefore, for us, the testament to the truth of the whole thing is that the Fourth Republic of Ghana has lasted 25 years of Radio I, or 27 years of the Fourth Republic. And you have a situation where other republics did not last. You don't have a situation now where soldiers have to take over one radio station, although we are seeing the abuse of such privileges. And I believe that for those who want to give credit to the survival and the sustainability of the Fourth Republic, I think the difference has been the advent of radio pluralism and the fact that the public has been allowed to make its own voices.
Absolutely. And so let's fast track to 2019. after all these years of Fourth Republican democracy and the constitution that
Yes.
you used to set up Radio I, what's your assessment of how press freedom is doing in 2019?
To be honest with you, press freedom, we've never had the press freedom. I mean, people will be surprised.
We've never had a press.
No, we'll be surprised. You see, you got to have freedom from something. What are you freeing yourself from? And if you look at Article 162, it said freedom of the press is guaranteed.
Yes.
Now, what do we mean by freedom? We are confusing two things. There is no doubt that we have pluralism. There's over 400 stations or media broadcasting of various sorts. So clearly there's pluralism.
Doesn't that equate to freedom?
No, at all. And there is also free speech of a certain level, that people can speak their mind relatively freely until the recent developments. Now, those two things have confused the whole thing and said, there is media freedom or press freedom. There is not.
Explain.
The whole thing says that, especially in Article 1624, very especially, that the press shall be free from interference of the government, and its editorial independence shall be guaranteed.
Yeah.
Now, for me, that is media freedom, because it's freedom of the government.
Yeah, but isn't that what we are enjoying today?
No, we are not enjoying it. We've never enjoyed it. No, we've never enjoyed it because, first of all, contrary to what the Constitution said, and the establishment of a specific body to look after the media in Ghana and the press and the practice, the National Media Commission, the law that was established in 1995, setting up the National Communications Authority, puts the media, by dint of the fact of allocation of frequency, into the hands of the National Communications Authority. The National Communications Authority happens to be an agency of government. So for me, that is an anathema, and that's one of the reasons why we went to court and said the Constitution specifically forbids government interference with the media. So
you think that the mere architecture of the NCA amounts to government interference in the media?
Well, not the architecture, no, because there's several functions.
Okay.
But the specific function
the authorization
that gives the authorization function to NCA is not both unconstitutional, it is illiterate. It's illiterate for the fact that even me, who is of the Asante blood and an engineer by training, knows that the word license and the word authorization mean the same. And if anybody wants to doubt it, they can consult even the cheapest dictionary in the world. That license and authorization means exactly the same. So I do not see how you say that, and in the most famous ruling, that's of the Supreme Court, yes, you do not need a license, but you need an authorization. That is the most inane and stupid judgment I've ever heard. But
you're risking contempt of court here.
No, I'm not risking contempt at all. I'm giving my opinion of a judgment, and I have a right to give that opinion. And the fact that you say that license you don't need, but you need authorization, it's an idiocy that we have lived it for far too long. And because of that idiocy, it's opened the gate for continuing government interference from day one, from the manner in which frequencies, radio broadcasting stations were established, right to this day when we have seen the biggest infraction of media freedom.
Let me ask you that, now that you've mentioned it, is it the biggest infraction you say?
The biggest infraction.
Which specific example are you referring
to? The shutting down of radio stations perceived to be sympathetic to the opposition, the use of armed security of the national apparatus to actually raid radio stations, the national security apparatus going into a media house to say to somebody or to the editors, take down these articles.
As in the modern Ghana example.
Exactly. Those are infringements direct of Articles 162
Let's separate the two examples.
Constitution.
Let's stick with the NCA's actions, with the shutdown of Radio Gold and XYZ in Accra, to be very specific. The NCA, and you cited the Supreme Court, the court ruling. The NCA had the court backing, the court ruling on its side. And their position was they were simply executing a lawful order.
Post-facto rationalization of an absolutely unfortunate act. Because it was very clear from the beginning, and also even the judgment of the arbitration that they were involved in with Giba, that the manner in which they prosecuted the whole thing was absolutely wrong. If somebody owes you money, there are laid down rules in which you seek to collect your money. You don't take armed goons to go and shut them down. Now that's irrelevant. They say they have the absolute right. But that, in fact, you see, if it claims to be not in infringement of 1623, which was the subject of litigation, it's a clear infringement of 1624, which says you have no interference with a radio station and with editorial independence. Clearly, if you shut down a station, that is the biggest sort of editorial independence you can tarnish. Because at the end of the day, if you want your frequency, there's electronic ways in which you can either jam the station or take your frequency away without actually sending armed goons to raid that station. So I'm in no mind about this, and we'll be minded very, very soon to take this matter back to the Supreme Court. But the post-facto rationalization is unfortunate. And I think it's unfortunate because, let me put the record straight. The person, the legal person who defended the actions of Radio I, right from the beginning, right through to the Supreme Court, is not the president of Ghana. Though I cannot believe that he did it simply because he was defending a client. And because of Nana Akufo-Addo's record as a champion of human rights and freedom of the press and freedom of speech, etc., I believe that certain people acted and abused his name to act without his permission.
On the NC one?
On the NC
so
one.
So he definitely didn't know
I haven't finished it, Secondly, Kandapa, the Minister of Security, was a member of the board of directors of the Independent Media Corporation of Ghana, the promoters of Radio I. I cannot see in what capacity or the rationale or reason that Kandapa will send goons to go and raid a radio station. It doesn't make sense. Or even to have members of the national security go to modern Ghana and tell anybody to shut a radio station down. And third, but also very important, the chairman of the NCA, Kwaku Seshiado, cut his teeth and his record on being a fierce defender of media freedom and a fighter of free press and freedom. So the involvement, whether intended or overt, of these three characters in this unfortunate and flagrant breach of media freedom is unfortunate. It's very, very bad, and steps must be taken very quickly to reverse it. And to be honest with you, because I do not believe that the president authorized this action, for the first time under his tenure, I actually sought an audience with him and said, look, this is not the right thing.
You did?
I did, and I met him on the 8th of May this year. And I said, no, I think that this is now an opportunity that the wrongs that you so strongly fought against must be corrected. And I have suggested a way that he can proceed to get the correction.
You make a point about writing to the president, Nana-Addo.
Yeah, not just writing to him, I met him.
You met him?
Yes.
And he knew this was the conversation you're going to have with him?
Yes, because I'd sent the letters ahead of me.
You wrote to him first?
I wrote to him and I met him.
Complaining about what was happening?
No, I wasn't complaining. I don't complain. I always suggest action.
Actions, okay.
You know,
but your issue specifically was what? The shutdown of the two radio stations?
No. It was not a shutdown. My issues did not even include the shutdown of the stations. It was going back to the fight we had started.
Okay.
And
Which he and Sheshe, by the way. And Sheshe used to work in the president's law firm.
Yeah, and yes, and it still does.
It still does, yes.
And
Akutampa, by the way, Sheshe.
What I said was that, look, this is what we fought for. You are now in the position to do something about it. And I'm sure you saw the famous article, not yet, Uhuru. And I said that if indeed the court process has been exhausted, the Constitution grants permission to Parliament to make laws. So those amendments can be made to the NCA rule. Because Evans...
NCA rule to do what exactly? What are you amending?
What NCA is saying that they have to allocate frequencies and therefore you need authorization from them.
Yeah.
It's bunkum. The International Telecom Union of the United Nations is the body that sets and allocates frequencies for different uses.
Yeah.
You know, radio, aircraft use, the police, the walkie-talkies, anything. But, you know, so when they have decided that 87.5 to 107 point whatever is the frequency modulation frequencies for FM stations, that applies throughout the world. It's not us who defines it. It's not for the NCA to say that I have to allocate it. So Totobis Kwachi's first statement was correct. You see, by the Constitution, you don't need authorization. You need registration or you need allocation. Because authorization and licensing implies a use of discretionary power. And for me, I don't care what the Supreme Court decided. After all, people have to pass English to go and do university and do law. And that infringement of the basic language that we use to communicate and administer ourselves, of the English language, butchering it, cannot be pardoned in any way. So once you know that which the frequencies for FM stations are there, the NMC can decide that Joy can have 99.7. It can decide, you know, it is allocating.
Yeah.
It's not making any technical decision at all.
I mean, but this is a conversation that, as you said, has been had in the past, has gone to the Supreme Court.
Yeah.
When you spoke to the president about
that's why I was suggesting that Parliament has got the right to make, and you see,
so you
Supreme Court interprets the law.
Okay.
Parliament makes the law. So therefore, that anomaly can be corrected by a legal tweak of the
I'm just curious
Act.
whether you raised with the president specifically the shutdown of the two stations.
I did not mention the two stations. I talked about the general action, because by the time I met him, more than two stations had been shut down.
Yes, and
several stations
had been slapped with huge fines.
Yeah, exactly. So I raised that whole action. And the second action I raised was that Evans, in 1995, we submitted a memorandum to the Minister of Information, which has set up a committee chaired by the Deputy Minister, who then happened to be called John Dramani Mahama, to initiate the basis of a broadcasting law, you know, in Ghana, because we are going to have plural media.
Yeah.
So therefore, the GBC law was no longer relevant. We needed a broadcasting law. Surprisingly, 25 years later, we don't have a broadcasting law. And so the nickname that the minister gave me 25 years ago has come to actually depict media organization and practice in Ghana, because we don't have any laws that govern it. And people always go to the NMC and say, and then when matters arise, people go to the NMC. The NMC has no powers, it has no resources, it has nothing. Because at the end of the day, if you're a radio station and you want to protect yourself, you say, well, who's giving you the frequency? NCA. Yeah. So therefore, I'm going to listen.
That's where the power is.
That's exactly where the power is.
Some say that precisely because of the current president's role in the past as a champion of media freedom, the man who famously led the repeal of the criminal libel law, that the incidents you mentioned, the shutdown the rollback of the frequency radius for broadcast right now, which is as the NCA and the NANADO's watch have moved from 100 to 45 kilometers. Some point to that and say all these are systematic attempts to limit media freedom.
That is what I'm saying. That
and the man who
administrative
actions that tend to limit media freedom, and the man who's supposed to be the champion of media freedom.
I have known Nanado for many years.
Can he be absolved really of any responsibility in these actions?
I think we also assume that you're not guilty until found guilty. Yeah. That's the reason why I went to him, because I didn't want to sit down, speculate,
and assume,
and speculate.
But nothing has happened
to
reverse these things.
Because at the
Radio
time,
Gold is off air, if I'm not mistaken.
But that is exactly why I think that it was a serious infraction of media and suppression of media freedom, because all the other efforts which had started with ownership of pro-party stations to attempts to, if you like, influence, especially journalists who were seen to be impartial. All of those things have failed to achieve the desired effect. And therefore, the biggest and the most dangerous infraction is this direct shutdown of those stations. And in fact, if it's not corrected, you have opened the sluice gate for any government which comes and doesn't like any radio station to start shutting it down.
Yeah, and the NDC have threatened that they might do same and retaliate.
Well, that is why I don't think they believe in media freedom if they threaten that. But the other thing about limitations on frequency, in a sense, frequency modulating stations are supposed to be local radio stations, and therefore their range and their reaches are limited. And so from day one, the NCA should have actually done what it is attempting to do.
But
now.
It was 100 kilometers before.
Well, I don't know exactly what the
it was 100 before.
I don't know exactly what the ITU has got guidelines on these things. Why they didn't apply the ITU guidelines? Because quite a number of stations you can catch them beyond 100 kilometers, depending on the power of the frequency. The ITU has got prescribed rules on transmitters, their power, everything else, to ensure that it doesn't breach. But if you have waited 25 years and not done it, then your action now can only be interpreted as that you want to, in a sense, bring down the power of those media who you cannot control. Specifically, the most popular and the most listened to and the ones which are independent of partisan control. And so that, for me, is also part of the deliberate act of breach.
But that is all. The irony is all this is happening under the watch of the president.
But that is the point I'm saying, that
my question is, nothing, at least publicly, has happened that appeared to roll back undo what appears to have happened.
Publicly, I would have liked to have seen both the president, Kweku Sechiado, and Kandapa make pronouncements on this particular development.
They haven't said anything.
They have said nothing, and that is really, in a sense, a negligence of their sworn commitment to media freedom, and also, not even more dangerous, giving succor to people who want to misbehave, to think that they have got the permission or the backing of the incumbent government to do something. And in fact, you see, what I suggested to the president was that he should set up a committee under the chairmanship of Anthony Akoto-Ampao, who is probably the most knowledgeable on media, law and freedoms and things in this Ghana. Bring in the NCA, bring in the NMC, bring in other technical people, so that they can make recommendations to him on how we can deal with this unfortunate development and reinforce the media freedom that we have established in the last 25 years.
You think it has been eroded?
It's very, no, you see, I wouldn't use the word eroded. That's why I say that we never had From the day that the NDC government of Jerry John Rawlings, despite the promise of Tutubi Kwache, put media effectively under NCA instead of NMC, that was the arrest of media
but
freedom.
we never saw a radio station shut down under the NDC.
Oh no, we did. There were raids and shutdowns.
Taken off air?
Yes, because I think Urban FM and one or two others, it was not as dramatic as we have seen now.
But that's my question.
But there were. But the whole point is that, you know, we are not talking about degrees. We are talking about, and as strong as the law allows that, you know, you can argue about degrees. But we never had media freedom. From the onset of NCA, like I said, people have mistakenly taken pluralism, and we have a lot of radio stations, and the relative that people can call radio stations and talk a lot of rubbish, and even so-called experts sometimes don't even talk the law and breach the law. They've taken that to mean freedom. It's not. Media freedom must be, the Article 162, first paragraph says, freedom and independence of the media are hereby guaranteed.
Yeah.
Media independence. Independence from what? Independence is then amplified on 1624 and 1623. That says there shall be no need for a license.
Yeah.
And then 1624 says government shall not interfere with any media, nor shall it interfere either physically nor with the editorial independence of media. So we've never had the freedom.
You said recently, I'm quoting, if there is a ray of hope of halting and reversing the inexorable slide into state-controlled media, it is to be found in the current authority structure of the country. What did you mean by that?
Because the man who defended me so ably, not only on the point of law, but also ensured that I was not put into jail, is now the president of Ghana. He has the authority to amend the laws of Ghana and to ensure that which we fought for, and I believe he was very committed to, is actually righted as intended by 162. Some people have said, oh, the Supreme Court decision, and in fact, I don't know people like that. They base their decision on Article 164, which says reasonable laws shall be passed, etc., etc. But if you actually give a judgment that says license is not required, but authority is required, I think that's the most insane.
On the back of this quote that you wrote recently, do you really have hope, and the conversations that you've had with the president, etc., that the actions you've described as, you know, the biggest, I guess, rollback of media freedom in the last, 2 decades, will be undone?
I will distinguish the actions, the rollback of the actions. I believe that those affected are in conversation with the NCA, and I hope that those conversations are expedited and not allowed to roll on for several months or until after the next election. Then I would say that a deliberate attempt has been made to subvert to subvert the electoral process. But what I was talking about is the change in the law, which is and also the promulgation of the broadcasting law, which the two of which combined will enable the NMC, if, for example, it wants to sanction. Your employers have been in dispute with the government about certain things. That dispute has been sent to the NMC. What powers does the NMC have to resolve that matter, apart from slapping you on the ring and say, don't do that again? It's unfortunate, and I will bring this in, that whether it is by formal announcement or by action, that the government of my brother President Akufo-Addo says that it's boycotting a radio station because it does not like the tone. That it's a direct statement of attack on your own confessed belief in media freedom. Yeah. Because, look, the media is important in a certain way. We have only one time in every 4 years to choose who is going to rule over us. The Constitution, which was written to serve a certain purpose, does not have the checks and balances that places the actions of the president under the kind of scrutiny that we expect. He has been given all the executive authority of Ghana. We don't have the kind of system that, let's say, the Parliament of the UK or the US Congress will have in checking appointments and decisions, etc., etc. We have the absurd situation where half of the executive, in terms of ministers, must come from Parliament. So you have, in effect, push parliamentary oversight aside, because a lot of them will be looking to carry executive favor to be made ministers. And so our media is our savior. You act to check the government, to hold government to account, whilst we all go to sleep for the next 4 years. So if that role is now being pushed back by the government that you are supposed to check and hold to account, that is the beginning of the death of the democratic credentials that we've been touting for 25 years and 27 years.
Yeah, but what should the media do then? And because I've heard people say,
what should the media do?
I've heard people say, for example, that we've been boycotted by this government. NDC did same. For they actually held a press conference and announced it. You couldn't even attend a government government function. And that people have actually gone to the extent of saying, secondly, we've dropped for the first time in a long time in our press freedom rankings on the continent. We're the number one. We've dropped to about 3 or 4 now. That the media finds itself in a place where we operate in a very intolerant society. That either the government is very intolerant, or some actions or inactions of them had fueled a certain intolerance of people who are not direct government agents, but who are also dishing out insults, beatings.
Because people are trying to sow divisions amongst you, and instead of you, the media, coming together as one and fighting for your rights, you rather see, many of you, when you see such things, you look for the opportunities that you can get benefit from to push your own agenda. And instead of, and I think you've heard that famous Jewish thing about they came for so-and-so and I wasn't bothered because I wasn't among. You need to come together. Giba needs to get up and stop fawning all your rights and responsibilities and saying, well, government is going to do this and government is going to do that. The GJ needs to come together. The actions of Radio I, which nobody by the any way has ever thanked me for, is resulted in probably the creation of the largest industry in this country. Yeah. The broadcasting industry is probably the largest. The GJ has not joined in any of the actions. The GIBA has never joined in any of the actions because they were more interested in pushing the business agenda and in carrying favor with government so that things will happen. The industry needs to come together.
To do what exactly?
Well, for example, the industry, when we went to Supreme Court, we put 2 cases, 1623, which they ruled on, and 1624, which they refused to even consider. I intend, if the president does not do as I have proposed, that we will challenge 1624 in court.
Which says what exactly?
That there shall be no interference. I mean, so raiding radio stations is a huge thing. It's almost like creating a state of fear. And the effect on other media houses will be that, hey, I better not say what government doesn't like before somebody comes to close me down. That is the biggest attack on press freedom. And unless you all come together and fight this whole thing together And I know that it's unfortunate it's happened under my brother's time. But I believe that the right thing will be done. And I believe that the Supreme Court, if it doesn't have copies, I will lend them copies of the concise Oxford English Dictionary, so we don't get into this kind of absurdity again. And
so you're prepared to take this back to the Supreme Court?
Absolutely.
And challenge what has happened recently?
No, prepared to with you people,
yes.
with Giba, with GJ, with everybody else coming along. Just as Giba went to court to protect the interest of radio stations that were closed down, I expect Giba to protect the interest of the industry.
But this will be a fight, this will be continuing a fight that you and the president started 2 decades ago.
It does not matter. The president is now too busy looking after the whole country's interests. But fortunately, he's not the only lawyer in Ghana.
But are you surprised that
the
direct stations who are affected haven't taken this legal action all these months?
Because I don't expect them to do that. You see, what will happen, you know what will happen? Once they take action, it's get locked in the Supreme Court. The NCA has the freedom to say, oh, let's wait for the outcome.
And then you stay off air for forever.
You're giving them a ready excuse. Okay. So if somebody says, why haven't you done anything? Oh, well, the matter is in court. Which is precisely what we wanted to avoid from the word go. Exactly. So, yes. But I said I met the president on the 8th. Since that time, he's been very, very busy. I am confident that President Akufo-Addo will do the right thing by all of us, despite the infractions. I'm hoping that my brother, Kandapa, he's my brother because we were born on the same day, in the same year, in the same district of Ghana, and we're in the same industry. He will rein in the unruliness of the national security goons. He would ensure that no radio station is raided.
He's accused of directly being involved in the modern Ghana raid. I'm saying he's accused because he hasn't been, nothing has been against him.
I wouldn't comment on that. But knowing Kandapa as I know him,
yes,
I think more people were acting to please him more than he giving the instructions.
But isn't that the core? I've heard some media rights advocates suggest that if that is true, the people accused of torturing these journalists should, one, have been named publicly, interdicted, investigations done, and public made aware of what has happened.
I do not dispute that at all.
But we haven't heard any action.
No, because all those, that horrible, it reminds me of a Dubois and his culture of silence. You know, the government of the party that believed in the rule of law and the freedom of speech and expression and Kabi and everything is inadvertently, because I have no evidence to suggest that it has taken specific divisions, but it's inadvertently recreating a culture of silence in Ghana. Because if you don't condemn and you do not reprobate,
that you're using culture of silence in 2019, that you're hearing echoes of it.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah, because
that's such a chilling thing to say. Because
I'm sorry, I need to be very chilling. These are my brothers. We've been in the trenches together. We fought for press freedom. Because I believe...
Aren't you exaggerating this?
No, because the issue is that, you know, if a journalist, that's a story, or media house does a story, and it's not sure whether goons will descend on the station, they're going to be more cautious. That's human nature. So those in authority need to come out and say, not only do we have nothing to do with this, those who actually broke the laws of this country and acted with impunity shall be taken to task. And that silence, for me, as I said, inadvertently, is recreating the culture of silence, because you are actually, and then journalists are murdered and we don't know, there's nothing happening. Investigations which we don't know, journalists are beaten, journalists have to go into hiding. Exactly. And also, all of these things, you know, add up to the recreation of the culture of silence that we all fought against in the early 90s. And
has the party you knew and held fine, the MPP, which I must say you've still been excommunicated from?
No, I've not. My ban is over. But I have asked for it to be extended indefinitely.
You asked for it to be
Yes.
extended indefinitely. Interesting. That will come to that because I'm interested in that. But let me ask my question before I lose my train of thought.
Yes.
That party you knew, which before it came to power recently, was known to be the champion of freedom of expression, media advocacy, pushing the boundaries of press freedom.
Yeah.
Has it changed? Has anything changed in its DNA?
Well,
For this to be happening under its watch?
by their deeds, you shall know them.
What do you mean by that?
Because when we were in opposition, we're making noise, we're calling upon authority, we didn't have the responsibility. All that we did has contributed in letting Ghanaians give the power to the party. But the issue is that we now have the power. Our deeds in power mirroring the words that we spoke in opposition, and it's not. I'm not talking about condemnations. I'm talking. No. You see, now I cannot speak for the MPP, so don't take me.
I get that, but
don't take me.
There's a certain connection there.
No, don't take me down that route, because for me, the only personal thing I'll say on that is that when I was suspended, out of respect to the disciplinary committee of the party, I went to a meeting at the party headquarters, which was attacked by party goons. We had to be rescued by the commander of the Greater Accra Regional Police, whatever they call themselves. Two big lorry loads. Nobody in the party condemned it. Nobody in the party said anything to me. And the party has allowed itself to become an intolerant party, in my view. Yes, and that intolerance has gone into government. And all I would say is that I simply do not believe that what we all say, that power corrupts and power corrupts absolutely. I simply don't want to believe that of my own comrade in arms, President Akufo-Addo.
John Ajikun Kufuor put it differently. The power can trick you.
Who did?
John Ajikun Kufuor, the man you served once.
Yes, but it's the point of that he's also been in power,
Yeah.
and he did not. You see, and in fact, one of the things I will actually defend him was he promoted press freedom. He donated the media center to the DIJ.
Yeah.
He was very, very instrumental in making the media feel comfortable under his tenure. So I don't think that I will compare the two.
Yeah, I mean, but here's a controversial question then. If you're looking at the government, you've lived and seen all the governments since the Fourth Republic.
Yes.
You started Radio I, the challenges that you faced in the Rawlings.
Don't forget, I'm an energy expert. I'm not a radio.
Absolutely. People forget that. You obviously served under Kufuor, and
I served under Jerry Rawlings
as well.
And Rawlings' first government. And
you've seen Mills.
Yes.
You've seen John Mahama.
I have served
who
them all.
himself was touted as a media person.
Yeah.
And you've seen this current government. What is your assessment of how these various governments are performing in terms of press freedom? Have we improved over the years, or are we retrogressing?
I wouldn't want to give a ranking, except to say that the current government has been the worst.
That is harsh.
It's not harsh. You see,
has been the worst since what?
In the Fourth Republic.
Wow.
Because in all the other republics, there was the monopoly of GBC. So we're not really talking about press freedom. Here, through the actions of the one who occupies the position and some of us, we have actually established pluralism, which enables people to make choice. And what is happening now, both deliberately, because you are now picking out those you don't like, and inadvertently, you are now creating a state of insurrection and culture that is being eroded. And I cannot say that, to a certain degree, you can cite instances of the tenor of others. I'm not sure.
Yeah, I mean, but so some question that and say, how can you say that when under Rawlings, people like Kweku Baku were jailed, criminal libel laws slapped on people. Newspapers were shit bombed.
No. What I'm saying is that
Isn't that the worst period? Right after the
no. You see, I will tell you something. All those things.
No journalist has been jailed under this government.
No. Well,
people were jailed because they were journalists for what they've done.
You don't have to be put into prison to say that press freedom has been oppressed. Okay. Every independent study of Ghana's media says that more than 87% of Ghanaians say that they get their news and current affairs from broadcasting.
Yes.
If you're attacking broadcasting, and I would want to chip in at this stage, we have now got a ridiculous situation where we are moving to digitalization.
Yeah.
Where,
DTT.
yeah, where the company that's going to run the digital broadcasting is a government-owned company.
What's wrong with that?
What is wrong with that? What is the independence of the media about having a? Why not an NMC company? And now you have this company, and in fact, as I remember, just before you screened your documentary, the one that Manasseh did on the security situation, there was a lot of rumor on social media that government had switched you off, which turned out not to be true. But the reality of it is that a government-owned digital platform can literally pull the plug on any station at any time that it doesn't feel it wants to hear what it's doing. That's the reason why the digital station should not be under the control. Everything media, if we talk about the independence, because Evans, nothing about independence shields the media from the laws of Ghana. If you infringe and infract the laws of Ghana, you are just as responsible. Whether for libel or for whatever, anything, you are just as responsible. But the management of the media to ensure its independence and freedom. The Constitution, I don't think that you'll find any other body whose membership is spelled out in the Constitution of Ghana.
There's a whole chapter on it.
There's a whole chapter, not only that, the membership is spelled out.
Yes.
And it's to ensure that you do not use executive privilege or majority in parliament to abuse and subvert and take control of the body that is supposed to oversee the media. And I really hope that, much as I'm disappointed that this has happened under the tenure of one who fought alongside me to get a pluralism established, I really hope that when he has the time, or he will devote the time to ensuring that the right thing is done.
And most people say that may possibly well be true, that this government will do what you ask of them, but they will go back and say to you that this government was in everything that is done that people criticize it. The rollback of the radios was based on law. They will say it because they went to court. Giba would challenge it, and Giba lost in court. They will say to you that they shut down. Giba lost it. Giba
one
lost
second. I didn't say. You see, this is why I say abuse of the law.
Okay. I get what you're saying.
Yeah.
So you might do it legally.
It's founded in law.
Yeah,
it's fine.
But it's still a fact that it was still founded in law.
License because authority, as endorsed by Supreme Court. Sure, it's founded in law.
I get
but it's an idiocy.
It's an argument you can make, but it's still the fact that it's still
no. I don't want to even go there. It's
but just to recount.
Okay, it is lawful, but it's an abuse of the law.
Just to recount, they also tell you that they shut down a radio station to which you've already raised issues with. Again, was within the right of, and again was also part of an execution of a court order.
They should not, you see, if a law is wrong from the word go, that's why I went back to 1995.
Yes.
As far as I'm concerned, as far as all rational beings are concerned, or I believe even lawyers who say that things which are, if the law is wrong fundamentally, all consequential actions.
No problem. But until the Supreme Court reviews that decision.
No. The Supreme Court doesn't. No, please, Evans, don't get me wrong. The Supreme Court has reached the limit. It has actually made a decision and reviewed it and stood by what he said. So that part is finished. 1623 is gone. 1624 we may start. But the cure for 1623, you know, as determined by the Supreme Court, is for the president to change the law.
Okay, which is what you suggested.
Yes.
And finally, they'll say to you that if you really compare right after military rule in 1992 and the immediate years after that, the last 4 years, before we went to the next election, 1996, that period where we saw loads of journalists incarcerated just because it did work, that the man at the top... Well, they'll cite you Kuku Bako, they'll cite to you Kwesi Pratt, they'll cite to you others who went behind bars, and then people like Kweku Sechiado and co. and your good selves, how to go and protest for them to be released.
You know something, you are parroting...
They will cite to you that and say...
Evans, sadly, you are parroting the foot soldiers platform of debate.
But those are facts.
But two wrongs do not make a right. I don't expect
they'll people... Say that cannot be compared.
I cannot, you know something, I can only give you my opinion.
Yes.
Not everybody has to take it. You've asked me for my opinion.
And people will challenge that opinion.
Well, they can challenge
on the basis of those facts I'm pointing to.
No, they can challenge it, but I'm not moving away from it. But the supposition you have made is that if they do the right thing, they have not done the right thing.
Okay.
If Akufo-Addo goes to right the wrongs, as he stood gallantly in court arguing, we will thank them for doing the right thing. But that doesn't mean that we will forgive them for infracting the law at all. And it does not also mean that because somebody else did it, two wrongs do make a right. As you see a lot of the social media amongst foot soldiers going. Our infringement and infractions were lower than yours, were less serious than yours. Therefore, we've done better than you. We should not have any infractions at all.
Okay.
That, for me, is the position I hold.
That is Dr. Charles Rokubobe, and I told you, he doesn't hold back. He says it as it is. Regardless of the, you're disagreeing with him, he's made his points. I'm grateful that you joined us, and this is a conversation that I'm pretty sure will stir a lot of further debate in the media. But yes, that's what media is supposed to do, generate debate and discussion. You've heard his view, you might disagree, you might hold your own views on this. You can share with us on our many social media platforms. But that is PMS for tonight. My name is Evan Smith, and thank you very much, Dr. Charles Rokubobe, for talking to us.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Yes.
Because